Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Complicated Relationships Reddit Stories. Hope you guys are safe and healthy. Now let's see what we have in store for you today. In today's story, the man says we were high school sweethearts, got married shortly after graduation and just before I went into the army. It's been more than 24 years since we were married and recent revelations have turned my world upside down. Before I start, I want to explain that my wife suffered serious physical mistreatment for 2 years as a child and suffers from severe BPD, which was only recently diagnosed. Had we known about her mental health issues, we could have avoided what happened because we would have known what red flags to look for. This does not excuse her actions, she is still responsible for her decisions. 4 years after we got married, she had an affair with my best friend from the military. It was hard to accept and took me years to get over it, but I forgave them both. He disappeared for a few years while her and I spent a lot of time talking things out. When he came back, he was married and we had a lot of talks and things returned back to normal. He was like my brother and I loved them both. A few years later, my wife confessed that she likes closeness with females but never explored them. It was an interesting conversation, but she never indicated it was anything more than a conversation. A year or so later, she went to a party with some co-workers and after some drinks started messing around with her female co-worker. She said it was awkward and uncomfortable and they didn't get very far. She confessed to me that same week, and while I was not happy, I dismissed it because I wasn't threatened by it. Not long after this, she started hanging out with an old friend from high school that I wasn't comfortable with. Our kids would hang out and watch movies at his place and I went over there a few times when I wasn't working. Then she started hanging out there later and one day she came home at 6:30 a.m. and I was furious. She said I was overreacting and that they didn't do anything. She said that they were just cuddling on the couch and watching a movie. I lost it. But a few days later, after I had time to calm down, I told her I didn't want her to see him again. She never went back but gave me a hard time about telling me who she could be friends with. 3 years later, while we were having a conversation about her desire for female friends, she confessed that she had a close encounter with my best friend's wife a few months earlier. I was upset and asked if my friend knew about it and she said no. While drinking, again, she said that they were messing around and one thing led to another. Again, I wasn't threatened by her messing around with another female because she had said that she no longer has that desire. I was angry about her doing it behind my back, not talking to me about her feelings and then waiting so long to tell me. This was in 2009. From 2009 to 2014, we faced a ton of hardships. 2012 was our worst year. My biggest problem came from having no intimacy since our second daughter was born. By that, I'm referring to 1 to 3 times a month, if anything at all. I was being romantic, giving her roses, buying her chocolates, making her dinner, taking her out, and watching TV together on the couch. She just never appeared interested. I re-injured my back due to a military-related injury that made it hard for me to be as active as I'd like. I could lash out on days when my pain was at its worst and could be miserable to be around. I was never forceful, but I did my best to make up for it on the good days. I'm still waiting, even today, 14 years later, to get the corrective surgery I need from the VA. On top of that, I was working full-time, was a full-time student and trying to get my business off the ground. I had a full plate on top of my back injury, but I made it a point to make time for her. She was suffering depression from the birth of our last daughter and she would shut me out when I tried to talk to her. It started a lot of arguments. She worked part-time and was mostly responsible for caring for the house. Unfortunately, the house was always dirty and any conversation about it always resulted in an argument and her telling me that I needed to help more. So she started hanging out with some of the other soccer mums to vent her frustration and I let it go because I didn't want her to stay stressed out. I was already working over 60 plus hours a week, attending school for 33 plus hours a week and in daily pain. I didn't want her to feel like me and wanted her to just try to enjoy herself and have a good time. From 2014 to September 2021, everything was fine. I graduated with my degree and my business was picking up. I was working less hours. We moved out of the city into a rural community over an hour north. There was still no intimacy, but we were enjoying each other's company a lot better. My back still hurts and we occasionally have an argument, but nothing too serious. I was proud of our relationship, we were strong and all was good. We even just bought a house this year. This was up until September the 7th. I had always suspected she slept with her friend, but she had always denied it and even gave me a hard time about not trusting her. It was just a feeling and I never had proof, but I believed it was true. My wife went on a weekend trip with my daughters and I had to stay home to work. While they were gone, I had a serious nightmare about my suspicions and woke up in a sweat. The incident had occurred almost 15 years ago, but I still think of it occasionally, like a feeling of leaving your oven on after leaving the house. It just eats away at you. When she came home, I asked her about it. I was surprised when she finally admitted to it, but was more surprised when she admitted to several more affairs, including a man she fell in love with in 2012. I was devastated. She told me that she never messed around with her friend until after I accused her of sleeping with him. She said that she went to his place and they were drinking and he made a move and she didn't stop him. She said she hated it and it made her feel disgusted. But the next weekend she went out with him and some of her friends and he started to get possessive of her. Her friend saw it and she was embarrassed. On the way home she told him she didn't belong to him and that she loved me. She planned to stop hanging out with him. When she got home, this was when I said she couldn't see him anymore and even thought she made the decision on her own. She gave me an attitude about it. The next affair she had was January to February 2012. She had relations with my daughter's soccer coach who I knew from the games. He became friends with the soccer moms and they would often hang out. One night he calls her at work and the conversation turns to romance and they start going into the intimate details of their physical desires. He invited her over after work and even though she knew why he wanted her to come over, she went anyway. They started drinking and had physical relations. They got together 2 other times after that. In April of 2012, she met a guy at work who started talking to her. They started dating for a few months and did the deed in his car because he currently lives with his parents. They did it in random parking lots. I never met this guy, but he met my kids. She fell in love with him and when she found out he was moving to Texas to be with his kids, they discussed her going with him. She realized I would fight her for custody, so she decided not to go with him. She said after he left, she never had another affair because it was heartbreaking. This was all confessed on D-Day. It was a lot to take in, but she promised there was nothing else. The next day we continued talking and some thoughts started popping into my head. I was talking to my best friend about what my wife was telling me and he was consoling me. And then I realized that my wife messed around with his wife and I didn't know what he knew. I was concerned about ruining his marriage, so I asked my wife about it. I asked if my friend knew about them and she didn't say anything. Warning bells went off in my head, so I asked if he was there. She didn't say anything. My blood started boiling and I asked if it was a 3-way and she said yes. She confessed that he called her and said his wife wanted to have a third person, but she only trusted my wife. Supposedly, my wife asked his wife if it was true and she said yes. They planned it out and met a few weekends later. It all started when they started massaging his wife. I had no words. We've been seeing a therapist for a few months. I'm hurting, I feel stupid, ashamed, enraged, disrespected, and I feel pathetic for even considering trying to work it out. She's been faithful for the last 9 years, so she says, but it doesn't change the facts of what happened, and yet I'm stuck between craving her touch and being disgusted by it. If it wasn't for the fact that her BPD was a large contributor to her decision making, I would have dropped her. However, as I learned more about her disorder, I realized that feelings she was having in our relationship were strongly impacted by mental illness. She would only see the negatives in our relationships but never remember the positives. It was either all good or all bad. She would be all clingy and loving or hateful and nasty. There was no middle ground there. There is a lot more to the story about D-Day and her confessions, the turmoil and deceptions, but I'll save that for another post. Alright, so that was the first part and we have the next update coming up. But before that, if you are enjoying the story so far, please hit that like button and notification bell so that you will never miss out on any of our future stories. While my wife and I have been doing well on reconciling, she's attending her therapy and her couples therapy, working on her BPD and doing everything she needs to do. I have been secretly getting retaliation against her APs. One is a cop and I emailed his entire chain of command, the city council, the city manager, the county prosecutor and the county public defender, and explained to them how he used predatory grooming behavior to coerce a physical relationship with a woman with mental health issues who he knew was married to a disabled vet. Since his department just gotten over a physical offense with another officer, they jumped on it and opened an investigation. It will forever be in his file, and now he has to answer questions about his ethical behavior and his credibility. Another was my kid's soccer coach, and I just ended his 6-year relationship with his fiancée by feeding her bits and pieces of what he did and sharing messages by other women calling him out as a serial adulterer. He is now homeless and living on friends' couches. I still haven't told her, and I don't think I'm done. It never sat right with me, but they got off scot-free from any consequences, while she and I have to go through all this trauma to heal. I see her suffer every day for what she did, but they don't suffer at all. I've got 2 more to go. So after listening to your advice, I disclosed to my wife about what I had done to 2 of her APs. It went exactly as I expected. She took the burden of responsibility for me disrupting their lives and now blames herself. She refuses to accept that they share any consequences for their actions. She feels they should get a pass. She says she loves me, but is disappointed and doesn't see the point of me retaliating. Then she tried to make it about her AP's current partners, who had nothing to do with this and didn't deserve to be hurt. I pointed out that neither did I, and nobody seemed concerned about how it would impact me when they had the affair. Frankly, here is how I see it. I see 2 therapists and a psychiatrist. I'm taking depression meds, I'm suffering from PTSD, I have nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and fits of rage. I can't drive my car without getting triggered when I see a Mustang, one of the most popular sports cars ever made. I can't listen to country music anymore. Everywhere on TV are movies and shows about infidelity. APs have popular names I hear every day. I get FB memories with some of them in it. My kids' soccer pics are in my home and online with her coach in them. I'm still struggling to force myself to take care of myself. I was in a very dark place. She's seen 2 therapists. She's taken depression medication. She cries every day. She is also in pain. Even before D-Day, she would be hurt because of her guilt. Her fear of abandonment is on overdrive and needs constant reassurance. But she has to work every day on her BPD and never gets a break. Both of us are hurting. But her APs walked away with no consequences. They don't feel the anguish of what they did. They don't see the aftermath of destruction, or will have to deal with the years of therapy and work to reconcile. They deserve worse. The fact is, we all have a commitment to be decent people, to recognize boundaries and not cross them. A marriage certificate is a public announcement that 2 people are no longer available to anyone else, just like a deed to a home tells people a house is no longer available. These are the social norms we agreed to as a civilized society. Her APs broke those terms, and they make a victory notch on their belt and keep walking like nothing happened. And let's face it, what I did to them doesn't come close to what they did to me. Sure, the cop will get upset that he had to face some uncomfortable questions and be embarrassed. He's going to keep his job and it'll go away in no time. And the soccer coach will find himself another girlfriend to cheat on because he doesn't respect women anyway. Neither of them will go through the pain and misery we are going through. As far as I'm concerned, they aren't suffering enough. It'll just have to be enough for me. So she's upset, but she's already getting over it. It'll be a talking point in our next MC session. She knows she has no argument or defense to say anything on the matter. She's not happy about it, but it is what it is. Is it petty? Maybe. Is it immature? Maybe. Is it childish? Maybe. Is it healthy? Probably not. But as someone who felt defenseless, emasculated, ashamed and powerless and like a victim, I couldn't let that stand. This didn't just attack my family and hurt my relationship, it struck me at my core. I lost confidence, became insecure and lost my self-esteem. It crushed my soul and left me a shell of who I used to be. I lost enjoyment in my life. They robbed me of the value of something I felt was my most precious to me, my marriage. As a person who has fought for everything in my life, how could I do nothing? She should have known that from the beginning I wasn't going to let them get away with it, and I didn't. And frankly, if more APs suffered publicly, maybe they might think twice about getting involved in someone else's marriage. I know 2 who are today. And that's the end of the story. Well, Opie, it sounds as if you were desperate to reclaim some power in your life and did so. Maybe not in the healthiest way possible, but still effective. I'm also firmly in the corner of reporting cops who do immoral or illegal things every time. I do think that your wife failed you in one way though. I personally think it should be a waiver job to pass out all relevant and fair consequences for the people who willingly help them. Usually it just means cutting contact, but every so often it means more. She shouldn't have protected them even in her twisted mind. She was just accepting blame. I hope maybe this will help show her how she can help ruin more lives than just hers and yours. Good luck. Thank you all for listening. Please like, comment and share the story if you enjoyed it. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss out on our future videos. Take care.